May I ask something about it? So you mentioned trauma, and that's a really beautiful metaphor. Is it possible for a person who has experienced trauma and repressed something to access it by themselves? I mean, I would guess that not really, but yeah, I guess a follow-up question would be, as a therapist, how do you help people look into that? Because they usually can't look directly into it, like it's too much, it would be too destructive for the psyche.
So, in order for us to be able to open the basement door and to see what it is that's been repressed, which, by the way, is a healthy response to a trauma that we're not ready for, okay? We only repress it, fight, flight, or freeze, survival skills, because otherwise we would be overwhelmed by it, particularly as a child. So the fact that we're traumatized and we go on as if everything is okay is actually a coping that is necessary and effective. But you're right, there it is underneath. And how does it affect us? Well, the past is carried into the present and into the, in life. Now, key concept. We really can't do the work of trauma until we feel safe enough in ourselves. Okay? If I'm unstable and unsafe and I'm coping in all these ways that are maybe unhealthy, then to try to open the door to see what that trauma is and how it affected me is not, it's a re-traumatization. Okay, so it's only when we've gotten to the point that we feel safe, and there's why therapy and an awareness of how trauma works is so important, because it's only when we feel safe enough that we can start to revisit and review the impact that trauma has had on us. Safety is a need. And
Sorry, just one more follow-up question here. Well, suppose a person has managed to create this safe space for them, say within their own household. So they have created a certain space. It might not be a very big space, but they can operate well enough, they can function well enough within this space. The space is supporting. But then what would motivate that person to open the door and look into the horror? Like, I'm safe enough, I'm good enough, finally I'm safe enough. Like, why would I, poke that? Like, what can motivate a person to go deeper and look into that if they manage to create that safety?
If I may, safety doesn't necessarily mean happy. So being safe is just like, okay, you have a base, you have like a home, for example, but is it the home you really wanted? And I think the difference between therapy and coaching, for example, is sometimes I have to say no to some customers, because if they are not okay with opening this trauma, then I will guide them to a therapist, because it's not my job. My job is more into actions, like, okay, you are aware of this trauma, so now you know the consequences of what it is doing to your life. So now what do you want to do for your future and in the present moment? While I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but therapy is more like, okay, maybe you're not that aware, so we need to dig really deeply into this trauma to make sure that, it's like a wound. We need to open, and if you don't disinfect and do all this necessary stuff, then are you really safe?
I often think of trauma as being the past being carried along with us. And coping, which is a very important thing, can lead us to this place where, we think, I'm okay, I'm coping, I'm dealing with life, I'm functioning, I have a job, everything looks on the surface like I'm okay. But coping is not meant to be the same as living, especially fully from the inside out, okay? And coping wears thin.
Yeah.
So what was very helpful when we needed it at the beginning doesn't feel the same 10 or 20 years later.
Yeah.
And we start realizing that I'm just coping.
Yeah.
I'm not really okay. And then that's when we feel the need, something's wrong. Yes, there's this history. Yes, I haven't looked at it. Yes, I've avoided it successfully. And it becomes quite self-evident that I either have to deal with it or I'm going to devolve into different kinds of coping, often unhealthy coping with escapism and these kinds of things. So there's a readiness, and I actually think it takes often about 10 years of adulthood. You don't see too many 23-year-olds. Well, I used to work a lot with a horrible reality of childhood sexual abuse. And I often found that it wasn't until someone was in their late 20s or early 30s that they were ready to have enough of themselves to be able to reflect back on what happened. There's so much that goes into keeping it repressed that it's not until that point or even later that the person starts to go, okay, now is part of what I have to face. It isn't something where you say, okay, should I open the door or not? It's much more like, no, the door is being knocked on from the other side, and it's like, okay, there's something here I have to face, okay?
And I just want to add something, because I read it somewhere, like triggers, these are gifts from heaven. Because when it's time for us to look into that basement door, it will always, it will always come up, and you can't escape from it. And that's where you know, the defense mechanism, the coping comes in, but then it wears off later on. So whatever comes right now, that's the only thing that you need to deal. And then, you know, I'm not saying that things will come up after that, next and next and next, but there's perfect time for that trauma to come up when it's time for it to be faced. Is what you've said, Douglas. Like, if you have created this safe space, if you have created this strong sense of, okay, am I ready? Okay, let's deal with it.
But I believe that it's really your choice. Sometimes, you know, you have these triggers, but it's up to you to decide when you want to deal with them. Because sometimes I've seen some clients, you know, they're like, yeah, I am aware that, you know, something happened in my life in the past, but I'm not ready yet. And it's completely okay, because what I don't like, as you know, when you work in this environment of helping people to be more aware, is kind of like this guru role, like, you know, I know, so I will show you, and whether you're ready or not, it's the way it is. And I don't like this kind of thing. So always trying to give the choice to this person as, oh, you have this problem, that's fine. Do you want to work on it? And if you don't, it's okay too, because at the end of the day, self-development is for your whole life. I mean, I'm 40, I cannot wait, and I'm sure at 80 I will still have some triggers and trauma, but I will, oh, here it is, I forgot about this one. So yeah, but it's always remember that it's your decision to work on it or not, and nobody should force you to do so.
Yeah, I agree. I call it readiness. Okay, and you can't force things, and certainly a therapist should never be intrusive into someone else's process. It's really the opening up to what people are ready, and particularly they have to feel safe, and that's one of the things about therapy. It's so important that a person feels safe enough to be able to have a willingness to go to the place they've been avoiding most of their life, you know.
Put it in the cultural context though, because I feel like, I know it's funny being a person from a place which is between the West and the East, both geographically and culture-wise. I still like, my generation was definitely raised on the Western definition of normality. So when I think about what is normal, I think about what is normal in America, even though there is quite a bit of there is a difference, in fact, between life there and life where I was raised, which I guess also creates a certain amount of conflict. But am I correct in my assumption that in the Eastern culture, well, Marie Cathy would probably give some perspective on that, community and family is a significant part of that coping. So actually, if a person has, say, a trauma, they might just keep functioning within their community, and if they're getting enough support, and maybe if their coping mechanisms are reinforced by the society around, it's easier to just, it might not be optimal from the Western point of view of what an individual should be like, but it's pretty optimal from the Eastern point of view when you function quite well within this social context that you have around you. To what extent do you think these cultural differences affect how people measure, sanity, normality?
Whew, that's a big one.
I just talked about this to my roommate yesterday. And in my experience, I grew up in both culture, East and West. So it was really like a very big struggle, because in France, it's all about freedom and your individuality and celebrating yourself. Which at home, it was more like you need to be in the family. We are a community, so at least I would say, it's not that your individuality doesn't exist, but family first. Family comes first all the time. So it was really, really difficult to know what is right and what is wrong. And so I came to the conclusion that there's no right or wrong, actually, but instead of feeling ashamed or don't understand which culture should I follow, I decided, I am very rich because I have both cultures. So I'm taking what is best in one and one is best in the other one. And I would say that, culture is an indication, but it's not necessarily the way. So you just, choose what you want to take and what you want to release, like emotion. Yeah. But I'm very happy when I am with my family, but when I want to have this individual, I become French. So it's like having a mask.
For my experience, being raised in an Asian community since I was born and raised in the Philippines, and we are culturally really into community and family orientation. So I mentioned that I really fought for my individuality, even if people around me are trying to repress or suppress that side of myself, but I kind of fought for it. And then the journey of traveling across Western countries made me realize that, these people are too individualized, and I kind of navigated my way around it with still having the background of my family, but I have to detach myself from them for me to be able to navigate my way, my life, the way other people are showing it to me, because I grew out from the community that I belong to. So the people I was surrounded with was really into their own individuality and self-actualize. For us, back in the Philippines, I can see the people, my colleagues, my friends that I'm really close to, they're still in that state of, family orientation. Okay, they haven't really explored their individuality and they don't know who they are, which for me, in that sense, I feel like just step outside, just discover yourself, but it doesn't land in their head. Right. It really didn't make sense. But I also got to a point where I detached myself to that community, too individualized, that I was so lonely. And and that gave me a really conclusion that not the Western culture, you are so free and individualized, but you're actually living a life without external connection, so lonely. So now in my journey, I feel like I have to find my way to come back to a healthy community to attach to, and also not to lose myself within the community.
I think this is a profound question, and Thich Nhat Hanh was the one who actually said the next enlightenment is community. So if we can think of how we can develop as individuals, it doesn't mean to take a path that separates ourselves from community or family. It's rather that in the ways in which we come to be ourselves, we include ourselves as part of, I like the word humanity, okay? So there's another way to look at it. One is what I call the 3 levels of desire. Okay, level 1 is childlike. Okay, I want what I want when I want it. Okay, and we shouldn't get rid of that. Okay, but mostly if we mature, we're going to move to level 2, which is I want what's good for me, what's healthy, what considers my well-being. Okay. And level 3 is is my desire to want what's good for me and is congruent with humanity. Okay, it's not separate. It's not isolating myself as a way of being oppositional, or it's looking at how each one of us as individuals can represent what is the potential for humanity. And it certainly isn't a diminishment of something. I think it goes back to whether our communities and families have guidance that's too restrictive and requires us to limit ourselves, or whether it holds the balance that allows us each to discover who we are. And in that case, the community is such an important part of who we are. It's not an either or. In fact, I think the ideal is when each one of us can be true to ourselves in ways that commit to being with others. I mean, this is an example of it. Okay, here we are, deciding to share our stories and our truths because we value what comes from this, the fact that we're communicating through these topics that we're all grappling with.
So as we are coming to an end with this conversation, just to make sure that we all are living with clarity, and we can summarize and close the space by sharing last insight for whatever we have tackled: self-awareness, self-acceptance, and just living inside out. Would you like to share anything, anyone? Just a short takeaway, like an insight that we got out from this dialogue. I would like to start.
Yes.
Let me just start then. Hearing different perspective from all of the 3 of you, it actually gave me, a thought popped out that all of us has different journeys, and me personally, I have this like judgment towards people, and I try to really reflect as to which part of myself I'm still like judging, because whatever is in reflects out. And then that gave me the conclusion that it's just an acceptance. If I accept myself within, I also accept the people around, that they all have their own journeys. We can't drag them down, we can't pull them up. So with this conversation, it opened my mind, like, this reflection is totally, it kind of like integrated today, which I'm happy to have this conversation. As what I've said, like, we learn by listening to each other's stories. There's always wisdom behind all these individuals that we meet. So just being open.
I guess I was able to formulate my insight from today. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm catching myself that, with the questions I'm asking, like today and in general, whenever I search for some information or talk to people, I still have this, like, speaking of having enough guidance, I still have this inner child part who's really looking for someone to tell me what's right and what's wrong, and to explain how things should be, and like what's the right approach, how things are supposed to be. And actually there is no such thing. I mean, of course, there are certain, I guess, generally accepted truths, but in the end, I need to foster this, I guess, adult part of myself, self in general, to get to develop a better ability to navigate the world and how I see it works by myself, because nobody is really going to tell me what's right and wrong. And it's a useful thought to keep in mind, not to cling to that and not to look for that external, benevolent figure who knows it all, because I guess there is no such thing. But that being said, I'm very grateful for all the wisdom that you guys shared, for your perspective, and thank you, Douglas, for making for helping me make even more sense out of your book with your comments on that.
My takeaway from this conversation is that I'm very grateful, and I really have hope in this world now that we can meet other people from other culture, some people that we barely met, and we are aligned with the feelings and all this conversation. And when I see the world right now, it doesn't look like so good, but at the same time, having this small conversation gives a different perspective. So I'm like, there's so much to do, and we should continue in that sense. So thank you for that, and it's just confirmed that I'm on the good way, and I'm on my right direction.
We are unique. There's a certain kind of validation when we're hearing each other and either recognizing how much we share a common truth, a sense of what it is that resonates with our ideas, or even the ways in which we see things uniquely different. But the fact that we could spend an hour and a half and let it go by so quickly, sharing the richness of these questions, is where the connection occurs. There's actually a huge distance between all of us, because we've come our own paths. But the fact that we can have the kind of conversation where with I think is a lot of caring and sharing, we can feel the connection that comes from that. So for me, this is a deeply satisfying. Is what I hoped for, to have the kind of conversation, even in front of a camera, where it feels real, and it feels like we're exploring and good things, So.
And it beautifully unfolded the way how it's supposed to be. And yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Douglas. Thank you for your time and presence. I hope we stay connected and support each other after this and what's coming up next. So